We are live. Hi, thank you to everyone who's joining us today for this. I'm really thrilled that we had the chance to do this little chat just before our Kickstarter ends today. And I'd like to introduce Gareth Thomas, who some of you will know if you've been watching the fantastic Pangolin film that's out on Netflix that came out this week. And I was lucky enough to meet Gareth earlier this year, almost by coincidence. I didn't set out to actually meet him, but we happened to be in the same place at the same time, which was wonderful. So, Gareth, thank you and welcome. And yeah, tell me where you are right now.
Thanks so much. It's nice to see you again. I'm at La Palala Wilderness up in Limpopo in South Africa, home to Kulu. So yeah, that's where I am right now.
Okay, and sorry, I'm going to leap straight ahead. Is Kulu seen ever nowadays? Do you know how Kulu is doing?
So since I removed his tags, I can't remember exactly how many months ago that is now, but I'm thinking probably about 8 months ago now when I removed his tags. There have been sightings in the area of we know 2 pangolins were sighted in the area which weren't him, and then there apparently was a 3rd pangolin sighted in the area, and we can't confirm whether it is him or it isn't him. So
okay.
Yeah.
And how do you feel when someone says there's a sighting? It must be like a nervous parent.
I mean, not really. I think the nerves of the parenting actually left quite a long time ago. You know, once he was comfortable in the wild and once he was out there and we could see that, you know, he was where he was meant to be, that nervousness completely subsided. I mean, the first thing I hear, if I hear there's a pangolin sighting, I just want to go there. Just at the, you know, if there's that it could be him, yeah, I mean, to see him would be incredible. But at the same time, I think not seeing him and not having anyone see him is, in a way, just as good. So yeah.
Yeah. No, well, thank you. Sorry to leap straight into that, but it would be wonderful if you just took us back, well, to the beginning of the idea of making this film. How did it come about? What got you on this path?
So I was doing wildlife photography, and I reached out to a whole host of different organizations and offered financial support, but I also wanted to get involved on more of a hands-on level. And I think pretty much all of them except one just sent me bank details. And from the African Pangolin Working Group, Professor Ray Jansen got back to me and he said, meet me for a cup of coffee. And Ray and I always sort of laugh, as that was quite a seminal day for us. And yeah, we met for a cup of coffee, and then he asked me if I'd ever seen a pangolin, which I hadn't. And then he took me through to the Johannesburg Wildlife Vet, and I saw my first ever pangolin that had been recovered from the illegal trade while it was at the hospital. And I just started volunteering to walk as much as I possibly could. And, you know, being in Joburg, walking with pangolins at sort of these semi-wild urban spaces became a bit of a sanctuary in the city for me. So I just started spending as much time as I possibly could there, walking pangolins as often as I could. And that's sort of just how the journey unfolded from there. A friend of mine was shooting wildlife documentaries, and he said, you've got to stop taking photos, you need to start filming things, because I was just seeing the most sort of extraordinary behavior. So started with the filming. Eventually we got together a teaser. By that stage my octopus teacher had come out, and I got in touch with Pippa, sent her the teaser, and she eventually agreed to meet after some persuasion. And yeah, I mean, when I met Pippa, it was, I think, from that point on where it really. So Pippa said something to me the day that I met her that very much changed my entire perception and approach to sort of the whole wildlife perspective and conservation perspective and everything like that, even though I'm not a conservationist. You know, I met Pippa, and our teaser then was quite heavily focused on the illegal wildlife trade, the rehabilitation, the veterinary work, the people involved, and everything like that. And Pippa pretty much just said to me, look, if we're going to save a species, we're going to do it through love, because guilt is momentary, whereas love is permanent. And that was just this moment where I pretty much thought, okay, well, that's it. Pippa's going to direct this, and that's the end of it. And so she gave us some guidance on how to sort of rework the teaser and everything like that. And we just kept on going back and going back. And then eventually we got to a point where I think Pippa could see more the love connection that I was getting to have with these animals. And yeah, she sort of she eventually sort of said, okay, well, look, I mean, you need to tell the story, and you need to sort of be the voice in the story. And it was never my intention to be a part of the actual film itself. I just wanted to shoot it. Yeah. And yeah, sort of that's how it evolved. And that was about 5.5 years ago now. So it's taken us almost 5.5 years from that sort of initial teaser to get to the point where, okay, now we've got Kulu being seen by the world.
Yeah,
and that was.
We've had amazing feedback, and so many people. I was just saying to you when we were kind of having a brief chat before we went live that so few people know what pangolins are comparatively to all of the other species that we've covered at Remembering Wildlife. So to actually shine a spotlight and kind of open a window into their lives and their personalities is such an amazing thing to do. And yeah, I'm just thrilled that you've managed to get this film to go worldwide for a species people haven't heard of. So yeah, congratulations on that. And tell us, what are pangolins like as animals? How do you best describe them? They're sort of, I would say that they're possibly, I mean, when you really get close to them and they really do open up to you, they're almost halfway between a cat and a dog. You know, they're very much like cats, domestic cats, in a way that everything's always on their terms. You know, sometimes cats just don't want affection, and that's it. So everything is always on their terms. But they've just got this incredibly soft and gentle, loving, affectionate, and caring side for them. And I mean, they're still very wild animals. I mean, you can't have a domestic pangolin. You can't keep a pangolin in captivity like you can maybe a lion or anything like that. They are 100% wild animals. They never lose that sort of wildness to them. But yeah, I mean, some of them, I mean, they've all got their own individual characters and characteristics and personalities. So some of them, I mean, Kulu was a very headstrong individual. You know, he was very determined. He didn't really need me that much. Whereas other pangolins, they've got this quality where they just want to be close to you. They just want to climb all over you. They want to be close to you. They want to be held. That was definitely not Kulu. Moments of affection from Kulu were very, very short and few and far between. But I think it also just made those moments even more special. Yeah, no, and I'm kind of pleased that you say it that way, because my impression when I met the pangolins I met at the Kalahari Wildlife Project last year is that they were like little cats. So yes, you'd say what one was not interested in you getting close at all. Another one was like sniffing my face and kind of trying to curl into my neck and nuzzle. And they look so inanimate when you see a photograph of them because of the scales, I think. And actually the fact that they're kind of, I've seen videos in rescue centers again where people, they're kind of being tickled and things, and they really do have personality, don't they?
Yeah, and you're right. I mean, they're obviously covered in scales, and their eyes aren't very prominent. So if you look into a leopard's eyes, there's that sort of immediate eye contact. That cat's looking straight at you and it's acknowledging you. With pangolin, it's a little bit different, and they don't have these incredible facial expressions or anything like that. But what I found with them is that everything that they lack in facial expression and eye contact, they carry in presence. So, I mean, you'll know from being around them, they're just burgeoning with so much presence. And they're just so captivating. You can't take your eyes off them. I mean, you feel so drawn to the presence of this animal. And that for me was really fascinating with pangolin, because it's this invisible draw and attraction that you have to them. And when they're acknowledging you, even though they're not specifically looking you dead in the eye, or you can see that they're looking at you, you can feel. And that for me was more about pangolin, was more about the feeling of being around them, because they've just got this incredible feeling to them.
Yeah, it's almost like charisma, isn't it? It is that when you kind of meet certain people that you just know have got some presence about them, which is really special. So tell us about the journey from Pippa kind of taking it on to actually knowing that Netflix were interested. And, was there a day where you got an email saying we're on, or how did it happen?
So anonymous content in Hollywood or LA are sort of Pippa's agents. They took it on initially, and then it's funny, we sort of never really doubted that it was eventually going to land on Netflix. Even before Pippa came along, we were like, we're going to make a Netflix film, because the objective of all of it was to really just show pangolin to as many people in the world as possible. And that was Netflix. So that was, since day one, that was always it. And I mean, I think, after my octopus teacher, I mean, obviously Pippa's just got this incredible sort of genius around her when she creates a film. I was saying to you earlier that she's got this incredible way of taking a giant leap backwards and seeing a story from a very global perspective. And originally when we were doing it, before Pippa was really heavily involved in everything, it's easy when you're working with something like pangolin to be very fixated on a small story. Whereas Pippa has this incredible way of looking at things far larger than anyone I've ever met. And yeah, so I mean, we worked on it for, I think, about another year with Pippa on board before Netflix actually sort of said, okay, well, yeah, it's a done deal. We want the film. Let's go for it. And the story evolved on it for a few years before I'd even met Kulu. So, I mean, initially we thought it was going to be on another pangolin named Stevie. And it just sort of happened that I ended up going on this journey with Kulu, and we could actually document it from day one, all the way through, from his sting operation all the way through to his eventual release. And it just evolved like that. So, I mean, the beautiful thing about it, it was never scripted. It was always the story very much just flowed, and the story just very much weaved itself, which was amazing. And I mean, with the crew that we had and everything, it was very much just a process of allowing the story, rather than trying to curate it and narrate it and everything like that. And I think that came through, and I think that made it feel very real, because it was a real story.
Yeah. No, Absolutely. And to say, and I really resonate with what Pippa tried to do with the film, because in a way that's the same with our books, that we try and celebrate the species and help people to understand and fall in love with it, with the hope that then we can use that awareness to help their conservation. But you know, that there is another approach where there's a kind of very dark side to, you know, how all of these animals that we've covered are treated, you know, whether it's through the illegal wildlife trade or human wildlife conflict. But I know a lot of people find that so hard to see that they turn away from it, and then you don't tell the story. So yeah, your approach kind of resonates with us. But I mean, what is your ambition for the film? You know, where do you hope it's going to go? What do you hope is going to come from it?
Well, I think it's very similar and very aligned to what you're hoping to do with the book. You know, we didn't want to make a film about people. We want to make a film about organizations or anything. Our sole objective was to make a film about pangolin, and a film that introduced pangolin to as many people as possible, with the hope of actually allowing pangolin to, you know, be fallen in love with as many possible people around the world. And I think because of that, I would hope that people find their own place. They find their own organization that their heart feels drawn towards. They find their own people working in these spaces, because there's loads. I mean, you know, just in South Africa, there's a number, but I mean, all over Africa, there's heaps of organizations, in Asia, everywhere. So, I mean, there are literally hundreds, maybe even thousands of people that are working so hard to actually rescue these animals, to treat these animals, to rewild these animals. And I think my hope is just that people fall in love with pangolin enough to actually get involved and want to try and do something, because I believe that everyone can.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're getting various comments that I'm kind of sharing to the screen here. You probably had a chance to look at them; they come through. But you know, I think you've really achieved your objective with that, and say that, you know, this comment here from Chris: the film is so beautiful and moving. I've watched it twice already, and thank you for your work with the pangolin. So, you know, that's wonderful. There are some other people are asking questions how many variants there are. And actually, we were discussing this before we went live. And so I know this answer. There are 8 different species of pangolin. So there are 4 in Africa and then 4 in Asia. So within our book, we are actually covering off all of those. We were trying to work out how best to portray it. So we're going to have a kind of sub-chapter on the 4 in Africa with maps where they occur, and then another 4. So obviously Kulu was a Temminck's ground pangolin, but there are also pangolins that climb trees. And again, we were just chatting about that there's a giant pangolin. So if you're a normal kind of Temminck's gets, I think 6 to 8 kilos, something like that. The ground pangolin can be like 30 to even 40 kilos. So those are kind of monsters comparatively. And again, I was in Kenya in February visiting a project called the Pangolin Project, who are working to protect landscape and habitat for that species, because it's rapidly disappearing, and if there is no habitat, there's nowhere for them to go. So maybe it's worth us chatting about that as well. So obviously there is the poaching and the illegal trade in pangolins, but there are other threats, particularly in South Africa. Like electric fences are a big problem, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, the trade's a big problem. In South Africa itself, the biggest threat is electric fencing. You know, we've got farmland, game ranches, and everything like that. And all of these wild spaces have electric fences around them, and that bottom strand is the real threat. So what's happening now is Ray and I are actually doing a study whereby what we're trying to do is test safer methods of electric fencing for pangolin, but also for all wildlife, because it's not only pangolin that are affected by these fences. It's tortoises, it's reptiles, it's snakes, it's birds, everything. So that's a major issue here. It's not such a big issue in other countries. That's quite a localized issue, although I know that in Kenya that they're having some problem with the electric fencing in the ground, in the areas with the ground pangolins. I know that that's an issue there as well. And I mean, it's a tough one because, you know, I mean, to have these wild spaces, it's not only, you know, the fences are twofold. One where you've got these wild spaces and you're protecting animals like pangolin, like rhino, you know, you want to keep certain people out. But at the same time, a lot of this is driven by keeping dangerous predators in. So you can't have these wild spaces and just allow lions to go running around in rural communities and everything like that. So there needs to be a real solution that's found. That sort of, we need to find a balance. I think that's what we need to, I think that's the sort of the theme in all conservation work and everything, is trying to find a balance of cohabitation, where we can have these wild spaces and everything like that, but we can exist, we can coexist. Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, say, as we said earlier, if the land is lost, then, you know, there's nowhere for the animals to be. They definitely won't be here in the future. So I'm interested, you were talking, and I'm aware that some people who are watching, because I didn't know until a year ago, you talk about walking pangolins. Why do you need to walk a pangolin? Tell us about, actually, you know, when one has been rescued from a traumatic situation with poachers, what state is the pangolin in, and how do you go about kind of rehabbing it?
So I mean, we get pangolins in from the illegal trade, have generally been kept in like terrible conditions. So they're dehydrated, they're starving, and one of the reasons for that is pangolins don't eat in captivity, or at least the Temminck's pangolin doesn't eat in captivity. And what that means is that the only way to get them to eat is to take them out walking. So you can't put a plate, if you put a plate of ants in front of a Temminck's pangolin, it's not going to eat. So what we have to do is when we get them from the rehab, when we get them from the poachers, and they're going through the sort of the hospital process and the rehabilitation process, the only way to get them to eat is to actually take them out into these wild spaces and walk them. And it's not like walking a dog where you can put a leash on a pangolin or anything like that. You literally have to just put them down and let them forage and let them do their thing. And that process, I mean, that process in itself can be traumatic for them, because, you know, they've been through this incredibly horrific ordeal at the hands of humans, and now they've got this human following them around watching them eat. So it takes a long time for them to build that trust, and you've got to be incredibly patient and just allow them. Sometimes they just want to lie under a tree for 4 hours before they go out and forage, and you just got to wait it out, and you just got to allow, like I was saying earlier, when comparing pangolin to a cat, everything's on their terms. So, you know, you've just got to allow them to find the space and that sort of that trust to be able to now start foraging and eating around you. So, I mean, that's the biggest, one of the hardest things about, I mean, definitely with the Temminck's pangolin, is that the time that it takes to actually rehab and rewild. I mean, especially like Kulu. So, I mean, I was out walking with him from 4 to 8 hours every single day for 7 months. And, you know, it was just because that was the only way he was going to eat and grow and turn into a wild pangolin. So yeah, I mean, the dedication that takes from a lot of people is incredible. It really is.
Yeah. I've met quite a few people now for lots of different organizations who volunteer their time to walk pangolins. And say I got a chance to do just a couple of walks up in the Kalahari, and my observation is, one, I mean, they really move, don't they? So it wasn't just a gentle amble. You're like kind of trying to keep up with them, because when they're off on a mission, they properly move. So it was hard work, actually, doing it, and exhausting. And actually, this question that's just come up from Mary Louise here is quite relevant, because they're saying they watched the film last night and they wondered how you kept yourself safe at night when you're out and about, when there are kind of predators around. So did you have any concerns for your safety?
Yes. So, I mean, as you were saying, I mean, they move, and you would never think that these tiny little legs like this can actually cover 4 kilometers in an evening, and over mountains and through rocky terrain. But I mean, when you look at a pangolin, they are so perfectly designed to move in a straight line through bush. So, I mean, there's a number of times where, you know, I thought that there was a rhino or an elephant coming through the bush, and out would pop Kulu. They're incredibly headstrong and determined little animals. So yeah, I mean, look, walking around at night in the wild is it's an experience in itself. And I think here at La Palala, I mean, I was just given the most incredible amount of support by anti-poaching. They always knew where I was. I was checking in with them all the time and everything like that. You know, when you are walking around in the wild at night with, you know, predators like lions and everything like that, it's very much, you're doing a job that needs to be done. So you've sort of just, a lot of the time it's a big part of this, is that you're literally out there, and you know that the job has to be done. You know what you have to do, and you're doing it for Kulu or whatever other pangolins going through the process, and it's just something that you have to do. Yeah,
absolutely. And it really strikes me how time intensive each pangolin is. It's almost like, you know, one-on-one care that they need. And so, like, I met one lady, and I know she was having to set her alarm every few hours just to kind of, you know, when the pangolin first come in, to make sure it was still alive, and, you know, trying to get it rehydrated. So it's incredibly intense, and say hats off to, and I know you agree, to everyone who does this, you know, out of passion and love for these animals. There's, you know, so many remarkable people doing great work. We've got a few other questions here. One here from Jackie. She's saying their diet is quite specialized, which makes rehab more difficult, and why you have to allow them to forage for food. So we've kind of covered that, but one thing I think we haven't covered is that I think I learned that they're quite particular also about what they eat, aren't they? So if you've taken them from one area, they like the termites from that place, and if you move them 1,000 miles away, they won't even necessarily like the new termites that you introduce them to. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. And even and what we've actually noticed is that even within certain areas that have the same ant species, so they'll all have their own particular favorite of whatever ant and termite species are in that area. So, I mean, Kulu's favorite ant was pugnacious. He just loved pugnacious ants. But then you get others that will lean more towards termites. You'll get others that have a taste for drop-tail ants. So I mean, it's incredible just how, when you start looking at this closely, it's very similar to us. You know, I mean, you've probably got different food preferences to me, and so on the next person and the next person. And even though it's all available to us, we'll definitely have our preferences, and they're exactly the same. And I mean, lion and leopard are the same as well. They get a taste for a certain antelope species. So, you know, we think we're very distinct from the natural world and the wild world around us, but we're really not.
No, but I suppose the frustration is, you think people are trying to help the pangolins, and, you know, if you're providing food, as you say, one, why can't they just eat a plate of food in front of them when they're hungry, and two, then if you take them out and they're still being fussy, that you know, it's such a challenge. got another question here about, oh no, sorry, we've done that one. It moved across. There was a question about design of fences here. So Emma Louise was asking, has there been a progression in design of fences? So you said you're looking into it. One thing I did hear, maybe you might know a bit more than me, is that in the Sabi Sands, they'd recently put up, I think, like an additional fence, like a meter away from the electric fence to try and stop the pangolins getting. Does that work?
Well, I mean, we don't know yet. So a lot of this, so effectively what Ray and I are trying to do is, a lot of what's happened to date is sort of treating the symptom. So, you know, trying to modify the fence itself or putting up a protective barrier, or trying to, I think there was one attempt to create something that basically, if that bottom strand was triggered, it would stop pulsing and send an alarm and everything like that. So I think with what Ray and I are trying to do, we're trying to treat the cause rather than the symptom. So I mean, a lot of these fences are the way they are because of legislation, South African legislation, which was, I mean, it's decades old. I mean, it's up to like maybe 50 decades old, this legislation on saying if you've got certain predators, then your fence must be this way. But what we're finding, and there's a lot of anecdotal evidence in other countries where they've changed their fencing, and all they've done is they've lifted that bottom strand a little bit, you know, 20 or 10 centimeters. That bottom strand doesn't stop lions getting out. It doesn't stop wild dogs getting out. Wild dogs get out. If wild dogs want to get out, it's like basically throwing water through a fence. They go where they want. There's no stopping them. So a lot of this is as a consequence of very antiquated legislation. But you know, we can't take sort of theories to government and expect them to change. We need the data, and we need the proof that, you know, lifting the bottom strand or other things that we're going to be hopefully testing, that Lapalala have allowed us to test, which is incredible. Because I mean, you know, to try and say to a private reserve, okay, well, we want to do like 10 kilometers of experimentation on your fence, it cost a lot of money. So I mean, the backing that Lapalala themselves have given us has just been unbelievable. So there's a lot going on, and I think it seems like we're very much, I think, you know, I think I saw you mention something about it. It very much feels like we're in the zeitgeist of pangolin at the moment. And it does. I mean, there's so much traction at the moment with a film. There's other films coming out. There's your book coming out. There's a lot of talk about it. And I think that now that there is that awareness, I think we can come up with some sort of a solution that helps.
Yeah, no, definitely. And as I said, I think there's so many different ways, like all of the animals we featured, to tackle trying to save this species. So whether it is, as you say, it's trying to kind of save them from the poaching, whether it's trying to tackle the root cause of the poaching. And I see actually China's just changed their laws again in terms of what medicines in Chinese medicine can include pangolin scales within it. So that's reducing demand, which is a good thing, but there's still further to go. And then protecting them from things like electric fences, and there's still the intensity of rehabbing as well. So someone has actually written a question here asking, I don't know if you know the answer to this, so Tamarin is asking what percentage of rehabbed pangolins are surviving now based on the patient way they're rehabilitated, and how feasible is it? So I did see, I can't remember if it was in your film or I'd read somewhere else, forgive me, but someone saying they used to just put them straight out into the wild when they were brought in, and now the process that you document happens. Do you know what difference that's made?
So it is Nikki, the co-chair of the African Pangolin Working Group, who's in the film. She actually mentions that, you know, the whole process has completely changed. You know, years ago when, you know, everyone first started looking at pangolin and everything like that, it was just try and get them out, as quickly as possible. The veterinary care wasn't fully understood, and everything's come a long way since then. So I mean, there's a lot of vets that have made incredible progress in understanding, you know, sort of the medical aspect of all of this, because pangolins, you know, when they go through that trauma of the illegal wildlife trade, it does affect them medically. And if you just go and put them back in the wilderness, there's a very high chance that they are just going to die. So that's made huge leaps and bounds. I don't know the exact percentages. I can't say the exact percentages of, but I know, I mean, I would guess that in the last sort of decade, probably the numbers doubled of lives saved to when it was sort of first starting out, and for everyone was first figuring out this whole process and everything, and that's why the whole process has become so much gentler. There is that incredibly long and gentle slow release process, and that is just because, you know, you go take this pangolin who's been through this incredible trauma, go stick it in the bush, and it doesn't know how to release this trauma. So I mean, I think I said it in the film, a lot of the process does feel sort of very therapeutic, and sort of, you know, just allowing this pangolin to release that trauma so that it's not carrying that around in the wild, and, you know, being stuck in a place where it doesn't know, that's added trauma, the sights and sounds, and trying to reestablish a territory in an area that it doesn't know. So yeah, over the last decade plus, there's just been an incredible amount of learning, and I would say that I would guess that it's probably doubled the amount that are actually now pulling through after being rescued from the illegal trade.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic, and it's really wonderful to hear that, you know, that so much has been learned and is being applied. And but of course that all takes a lot more money, even though there are lots of amazing volunteers who help and do walking. You know, vets are, you know, trying to spend a lot of time and care and love on these animals, and so actually, kind of, as you said earlier, find organizations that speak to you and that, you know, you want to get behind and support is really important. And obviously I have to say this because we've got not many hours left on our Kickstarter, but, you know, if people pre-order our book now, not only will you learn about pangolins in that, then all of the profits that we get from this year's book are going to go to lots of pangolin organizations doing the kind of work that you've talked about, as I said. And we try and spread our donations around, so they'll not only go to kind of rehabilitation, but also to work on electric fences, if you know, if that's something that we can help provide funding for, and even kind of land protection for projects like the Pangolin Project up in Kenya as well. So but yeah, I just urge anyone who hasn't watched the film yet to please watch it and fall in love, but as we all have. And thank you, Gareth, for your sensitivity and for your determination to get this film made, because it does take something like this to get you know, the world to reappraise an animal that they didn't really know about before. So huge kudos and hats off to you, because I know it's been a labor of love, and yeah, I was so waiting for it, so I was so excited when it finally came out, and just thrilled at how beautiful it is. So congratulations.
Well, thank you. And yeah, I mean, it's an incredible privilege. I think in the same sense that I would say that you probably feel very similar. I mean, it's just such an incredible privilege to be able to do something like this and have some sort of meaningful and purposeful effect. So yeah.
Yeah. And what's your hope for the, you know, where this film will go in the future? It's out there now. What happens next?
I think still just trying to be present, and sort of and seeing where it goes and everything like that. I mean, obviously I'm an ambassador for the African Pangolin Working Group, so I think what we're trying to do as an organization is just trying to harness as much of this energy and awareness and see how we can cultivate that and continue to energize that into doing more. I think that's the ultimate. Is, I mean, you know, we've hopefully allowed a lot of people to fall in love with pangolin, now we need to use that love, and we need to amplify that love. And you know, I hope that it helps support the book. I really do. You know, how do you transfer that energy and that love into meaningful work on the ground? And I think something like your book is a good case study for that. Yeah.
Yeah, no, thank you. And then people are saying thank you, and they must watch the movie, and hearts, and yeah, thank you so much. So, so it's been brilliant to talk to you. Thank you so much.
Cool. Thanks so much.
We'll definitely stay in touch, and if I get updates from you, I'll share them with all of our followers as well. So,
cool.
Thank you, and
great.
Yeah, I hope it just grows and grows.
Yeah.
Okay.
You too. Right. Thanks so much, Margot. Thanks, Take care. Bye.